welcome to Mind Over Matter. I'm your host, Sana, and I'm thrilled you are here with us today. Listeners, we have got an incredible guest lined up for you, someone who is making waves in the world of stress management and personal transformation. Joining us is Jason Munson, better known as the Stress Interventionist. Yeah. As a top consultant at NeuroChange Solutions, Jason collaborates with the renowned Dr. Joe Dispenza to help people harness the power of neuroscience and turn everyday stress into a driving force for success. And today on Mind Over Matter, we'll be exploring the fascinating topic of brain power, leveraging neuroscience to transform stress into success. So, if you have ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or maybe unsure how to make stress work for you instead against you, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. So, let's quickly dive in. Jason, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor having you with us today.
Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. So, Jason, to begin with, before even we talk about neuroscience, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions surrounding stress?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions around stress is that people think they don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, they think that that it's not a big impact in their lives. That's something that happens to other people. It's something that if they're in stress, they're actually good at handling it. That they're okay at handling it, and all of those truly are myths. The research shows that people are in stress 70% of their day, which is a long enough that it becomes something that's just normal to them. They just accept it as a normal state. They actually don't realize that they're in stress. So that's a big obstacle for a lot of people to just even accept that they have stress.
Wow, I mean that's something a revelation actually. But I totally agree with you, Jason, on that. Also, many of us, I think, to add on, many of us think of stress as the enemy, something we need to eliminate at all costs. But do you think it's really that full picture? And, that is really true.
Short answer is no.
Okay.
Because the reality is that it's not possible to eliminate stress. What is possible is to change how we react to it and how we respond to it. So things happen in life that stress us out. There's actually three types of stress that happen to us. We have the physical stress. Those are such things like accidents of falls, cuts or bruises or anything like that causes a stress on the body. You have chemical stress, which you may not have control over. These are pollutants in our environment. It's in our air. It's in our food. It can be flus or viruses. Whenever we get sick, that causes stress. But the biggest one, the biggest negative one, is emotional stress, and that can come from work. It comes from our relationships. It can come from family. It comes from situations. These things, they're really unavoidable in our lives. So the idea of like, well, I'm going to eliminate stress. So there certainly there's some things that you can do. Definitely, if there are definitely TV shows that cause people to go into stress. But the bigger challenge actually is, how are you reacting and responding to stress, and how are you managing yourself to get out of stress faster? So you might not be able to control getting into it, but you can have a level of control of shortening the period of time that you are stressed or that you are in stress. And that is the definition of emotional intelligence.
Makes sense, Jason. And thank you for sharing that perspective. So now, talking about neuroscience, we hear a lot about using mindfulness and mental tools to manage stress. But I believe neuroscience adds a whole new dimension to this conversation. So How does neuroscience help us manage stress better?
Well, a lot of stress has to deal with what you're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
We can have, stress in the moment. So if you have, let's say you have a argument with your partner, or your, child does something that puts you in a stress state. Um, yeah, it's one thing to have that moment, and to have the emotional reaction to that moment, and then to move on. That's normal stress. That's what we're built for.
Okay.
What happens though is, from a neuroscientific standpoint, we look at how we can actually think about the situation that's going to happen, or that we're afraid of happening. So if we're afraid of getting into that argument with our partner, when we can start thinking about that, um, our bodies are so objective that they don't know the difference between the actual event or the event that we're just imagining just by thought alone. Our bodies process that or experience that, in real time as the same emotion. So if we're thinking about something, if we're stressing about something that hasn't happened yet, we're pre-stressing for the event. And if the event actually does happen, you have that argument with your partner. And then later that night, you're replaying that argument inside your head. Well, again, your body doesn't know the difference. It thinks that it's in that argument right then and there. And so you're actually re-stressing the moment. So you can pre-stress, be in stress, and re-stress, all about the same event. And you put your body into that physical state of stress. So it's biochemically, it's in that stress state. And this is how people get in stress 70% of their day. It's not actually the things that are necessarily happening to them. It's the things that they are thinking about. And that's where neuroscience comes in, is we say, oh, wow, okay, there is a neurological, neurochemical, biological, hormonal, genetic response that our bodies have to stress, or to even to positive things. It works the other way as well.
Wow. Wow. That definitely does add a new perspective here. And also, neuroplasticity. I think it's one of the most exciting discoveries in modern neuroscience, showing that our brains can change and adapt. But how does this process specifically help us turn chronic stress into growth and resilience?
Let me just think about your question here for a second. So neuroplasticity. So first off, is that there was, for a long time, it was the belief that, once your brain gets to a certain point, that it's fully developed, and that your brain doesn't change. And so the idea of neuroplasticity, came along and said, no, actually, our brains do have the ability to change. So who we are as our personality is not set in stone. We can actually, we can change our personality. And there's a term in neuroscience, it's called Hebbian law, created by a guy named Donald Hebb, which says that neurons that fire together wire together. All right. So, and what that means is that the more often that you repeat any thought, you'll have neurons that will connect together. They're going to each time you repeat that same thought, those neurons are going to fire together more easily each time. And they're going to create these long-term relationships with each other. And that's part of neuroplasticity. So on the other hand, neurons that don't fire together no longer wire together. So if you stop thinking a certain thought, the neurons that are connected to, or that are related to those thoughts inside your brain, they actually start to weaken.
Okay.
So you can make one thought stronger and another thought weaker. And so this is where people, they might have certain beliefs about themselves, things that they've said to themselves, maybe subconsciously, all of their life. For instance, somebody, could say, I'm, a negative thought, like, I'm so stupid. Right. And every time they make a mistake, they say that to themselves. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And so they've created a neural network inside of their brain that, every time that they get into a bad situation, they say that to themselves. A change would be if a person recognized, hey, look, this thought is not empowering me. It's not helping me. It actually has a huge effect on my results because I'm telling myself I'm stupid. So when I go into new situations, that's how I act. So if they change the thought and consciously started saying, I'm brilliant and I'm learning something new. This is something new, and I'm a brilliant learner. Changing that thought, that belief about themselves over time, the thought that I'm stupid starts to fade away. And this new thought that I'm brilliant starts to become the prevalent thought. And so when somebody is behaving in their life, when they're coming into their life and they're saying, I'm brilliant, I'm brilliant, I'm brilliant, you would imagine that they would have a different results than somebody says, I'm stupid. So that's how a simple example of neuroplasticity, how it works.
But I think it makes sense. Makes sense. Also, another, I think meditation. There have been different meanings interpreted about meditation, but it's often widely recommended for reducing stress. But uh, if you can break down the science behind how exactly meditation rewires us for calm and focus.
Absolutely. So there's all different types of meditation and there's all different definitions of meditation. So I'll explain it to you as I understand it from a neuroscientific level. So in meditation, you have your main part of your brain, which is called your neocortex. And that's what really connects you to your reality, to everything that's going on around you. So your neocortex has all these inputs, your sight, your touch, your taste, your smell, and feeling. You have your five senses that are sending all this information into your neocortex, and your neocortex is processing that information during your waking day. When you're in that state through most of your waking day, you're in a brainwave pattern called beta brainwave. And beta brainwave, the best way to describe it is when your outside environment is more real than your inner environment. So those five senses are constantly processing all that information. You're constantly taking in the information. Meditation on a neuroscience level is the process of disconnecting from your five senses. So you're focusing your brain in such a way that your inner world has now become more real than your outer world. You've dropped out of beta brain waves, and now you've dropped into a slower brainwave frequency. It's called an alpha brainwave. And this is where your inner environment becomes more real than your outer environment. So, a person who's just sitting there and, even just daydreaming, just like thinking about something that they would love to do, their eyes could actually be open, but they're more connected to the daydream than they are to their external reality. So it's starting to slow down the processes going on inside of the neocortex. So when we do this intentionally, we can do it through meditation. So you're closing your eyes, you're putting on some music, some quiet music. You're disconnecting from your outer world, and you're getting more connected to your inner world, through whatever intention or process that you're choosing to do. Once you're in that state where you're in an alpha brainwave, your body starts to go to sleep, but your mind is still awake in meditation. So people who get really good at this, they drop down into a slower brainwave that's called theta brainwaves. So you start in beta in your waking day. When you go into meditation, you drop down into alpha, and if you're in a really deep meditation, you're down into theta brainwaves. When you are in alpha brainwaves and theta brainwaves, the door to the subconscious mind is now open. The subconscious mind is responsible for 95% of our brain's activity. When we're in beta brainwaves, we're that's the 5%. 5% of our brainwaves, or our brain activity, is in that beta brainwave. So this is our cognitive functions where we're making decisions throughout our day. But that 95%, that subconscious is is like the program that's running in the background. It's a record, it's a memory of everything that we've experienced, everything that we've done, all of our beliefs. And when you are in theta brainwaves, that's also the state of hypnosis. And when you're in hypnosis or in theta, you're highly suggestible to new information, to different information. Your body or your brain tends to accept that new information without analyzing it. And that really is the doorway to reprogramming your brain through meditation, is to get beyond the analytical mind and to accept new information without analyzing it. So, a person that's in a meditative state, I prefer guided meditations where I'm listening to somebody who's actually, directing me, speaking to me. When I'm in that suggestible state, when I'm in the alpha or theta brainwave state, and through repetition, if you keep on giving your subconscious mind the same message over and over and over again, eventually it sticks in the subconscious mind. And then in your waking day, you go about being this new person that you have programmed your subconscious mind to be, and you're doing it on a subconscious level. You're not even thinking about it anymore. So there's a lot to a lot of information that could be packed into that question, but certainly meditation is a tool that I use. I try to use every single day to unfire things about my old personality that I want to leave behind. And I use it to fire and wire new things about the person that I am becoming.
Yeah. Now, this is something interesting. Many people think stress kills creativity, but under the right circumstances, it can actually fuel innovation. So, what does neuroscience tell us about this, complicated link between stress and creative problem solving?
That's a good question. I was actually watching a video this morning by the comedian John Cleese, who was one of the members of Monty Python. And he was discussing how people who are creative, when you compare them to their colleagues that are not creative, they have the same IQ level. A person that is more creative doesn't have a higher IQ than an average person. It's more of this process of getting into an alpha brainwave where they are playful, where they're having fun. And that really has a lot to do with getting into that creative state. Creativity has a childlike essence to it.
Yeah.
And children, when children are born, they're in the same brainwave state that adults are in when we sleep. They're down in delta brainwaves. That's why babies are constantly, falling asleep and waking up. And they stay there for the first few years of their lives. They're in that delta state. Then around 3 years old, they move up into theta. And this is where you see kids getting really playful, and they're really imaginative, and imaginary friends and imaginary beings, and Mickey Mouse is real and Santa Claus is real, and their toys have personalities, is because they're in this theta brainwave state, or getting into this alpha brainwave state, where that's all that there is. There's just creativity and imagination. And so as an adult, we have the ability to do this as well. Is we can get into these imaginative states of start asking some questions of what if this pen could talk? What if this glass had a personality? What would that personality be like? And you start asking questions about things that are, to the adults, it's nonsense, right? But, to the childlike person inside of the creator, they're looking, there's a lot of what if questions. Well, what if it was like this? And what if it was like this? And could we change it to, to be like this? So when we're creating products, when we're creating new ideas, when we're creating a podcast, or we're creating any sort of marketing, anything like that, it's requisite to know how to get into that state of curiosity and that what if mindset, and pushing away other thoughts of anything that is not in the present moment, and it's just focusing on right now. Can we just focus right now what's going on? Not think about our past, our known past, not think about our predictable future, but focus on the generous present moment, which is the only place that we can create from.
Wow. Wow. Great, Jason. I think a lot of golden nuggets on this beautiful, complicated relation. But for those dealing with persistent stress, it can feel like there's a no way out. So, what practical advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck, stressed out, and how can they start reclaiming their mental and emotional well-being today?
Okay, great question. I'm glad you asked that. So, I do a 1-hour presentation where we discuss that, and then I actually teach a 2-day course where we really get into the nuts and bolts in this. So I'll give you some quick things that people can do. The first thing you have to do is you have to become aware of when you are in stress. Like I said before, the research shows that you're in stress 70% of your day, which just means that it's normal to you. It's just something that you do, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. So a couple key indicators to recognize that you're in stress. The first one, and probably the most easiest one to recognize, is that you think about the worst case scenarios. And so, what I mean is like, if you're, let's say that your child, or your partner for that matter, was supposed to be home an hour ago, and you call their school, you call their work, and they say, no, they've left, they're not here, but you can't get them on the phone, they're not answering. This is a moment where a lot of people will go into a worst case scenario.
Great, Jason. So, also, if our listeners would wish to connect with you and explore more about how they can rewire their brain, or how neuroscience can actually help, how they can do that.
Yeah, so you can go to NeuroChangeSolutions.com, the corporate website, and you can find out more neuroscience and how we change people from the inside out.
Great. We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes for our listeners to connect with you, Jason. And thank you so much for giving us a lot to actually do some bit of self introspection when it comes to transforming stress into a tool for growth, creativity, and success. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, I would like to say you have more power than you realize to rewrite your stress story and use it as a fuel for positive change. So if you enjoyed today's conversation on Mind Over Matter, be sure to subscribe to us. Share this episode with friends, with your family, loved ones who could benefit from this message. And let's continue bringing and building this mindful, supportive community together. Until next time, stay curious, stay present, and keep exploring the power and potential of your mind.